Every season of Survivor is a story. There are main characters, sidekicks, comic reliefs, and villains. A good season of Survivor tells a compelling story. It will grip you and have you rooting for someone and against someone else. You will want to tune in episode after episode to see what happens next until it all finishes with a hopefully satisfying conclusion. Each short story that we look at together will go through one character's journey, from beginning to end, from the time that they are introduced until they inevitably get their torch snuffed or win the game. We will look at every major character moment and strategic move to determine whether they were a hero or a villain and whether they were a good or bad strategist. And with that, welcome to Once Upon an Island. For reference, we will only be observing what the TV show is showing us and what story is being told through the show. No future seasons will be mentioned, as the story and characters here have no idea and therefore are unaffected by those future seasons. All character moments and strategic moves are interpreted with the mindset of what the story is trying to tell us. And with that, I want to thank you all for supporting this channel. Subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing are crucial to this channel's growth and making all of it possible. If you want to do more to help make this channel an all-star, then consider supporting us on Patreon. You get all videos weeks before they ever see the light of day here on YouTube, and you get to vote for which survivors I tell the stories of, and of course, even get an exclusive Patreon-only video each month. Thank you for your support.
39 days, 18 all-stars, 1 survivor.
Rob Cesternino, considered by Jeff Probst to be the smartest player to never win, was a castaway on Survivor's 8th season, Survivor All-Stars. He had ripped through Survivor's 6th season, Survivor the Amazon, making huge waves and helping change how the game of Survivor is played. He had previously finished in 3rd place and was an immunity challenge win from possibly winning it all. So how does he fare in his second appearance? Let's find out.
Plus, we will hear from Rob tonight, the smartest player to never win.
What is important to note about Survivor All-Stars is how the tribes are separated. For the first time ever, there are 3 tribes of 6. The Mogo Mogo and Saboga tribe each have 2 former winners, but Shapira, the tribe Rob is on, has no previous winners, making them an anomaly. Shapira consists of Boston Rob, Amber, Big Tom, Alicia Calloway, Sue Hawk, and of course, Rob Cesternino. He enters the game as the highest placing member on his tribe and the only one who is viewed by the general audience as having been robbed of winning on their first season. I have a full-fledged story video on his first appearance here on my channel, but it is important to note this context before we continue. Now, unlike in past seasons, there is no marooning. Jeff is not giving some opening speech this season explaining what to expect and what's going to happen. Instead, each tribe is driven to their beach, left with a machete and a map to the water well, and that's it. It makes for a bit of a weird start to all of this, but Cesternino is optimistic about how the season will play out for him as he is ready to play.
I can't wait to start wheeling and dealing and building shelters and winning challenges and vote people out.
Now, this isn't super important to the overall story of Cesternino, but Sue Hawk is almost immediately annoyed with Boston Rob and Big Tom, and Cesternino is pretty much enjoying all of this.
See, worrying about the report. Okay, I'm okay now. Let's grab that big one there and put it right here, Rob.
They then get their first ever tree mail, and Boston Rob reads it out loud. And as it ends, Cesternino immediately makes a joke.
Bring your dive mask with you to face the man of flame.
That must be Richard Hatch.
Shapira does end up winning immunity, so they're all safe for now. Back at camp, everyone is happy about their victory, and this is kind of a blink and you'll miss it moment, but Cesternino is clearly having a secret one-on-one conversation with the immunity idol. What is he saying? We may never know.
We came back with a good attitude.
Now, this next event is not part of the official episode, and I don't normally do this, so I won't count it towards any character moments or strategic moves, but this bonus scene from All Stars shows Shapira having a mock tribal council where Cesternino plays Jeff Probst and everyone else plays each of the Saboga castaways. It is pure gold.
And the first person voted out of Survivor All Star, Jenna. Tribe. Let's go.
See ya.
After finishing the premiere, Cesternino is seen constantly smiling, having a good time, and since Shapira doesn't have to go to Tribal, we don't really see anything strategic from him so far. What we have seen of Shapira is how Sue is annoying people, Alicia is grating on everyone, Tom is sick of everyone crying, and Boston Rob and Amber start a flirtatious power duo alliance. But Cesternino is in the background just enjoying life. He didn't have a big role in the premiere, so his prospects of going far seem slim. However, this is the first ever All-Star season, and the edit now has to balance 18 characters that people want to see, which is different than prior seasons, so it may be nothing. We begin episode 2 with something that will be happening quite frequently this season: rain. And lots of it. It happens all of the time. But since none of the tribes have been able to make fire yet and therefore haven't been able to boil their water, this gives them all the perfect opportunity to collect some clean drinking water from the sky. While Saboga and Mogo Mogo seem to not be having much fun, Shapira is loving this. They even rework a classic Creedence Clearwater Revival song to fit their current situation.
Have you ever seen the rain coming down on the dawn?
And of course, Cesternino has a witty poem to describe what's going on.
You would have thought that maybe we were drinking champagne, but it was just getting water from the rain.
So far, it has really been the Boston Rob show on Shapiro. Almost every single thing that happens on that tribe is narrated by him, or it includes him in some capacity, if not both. The show makes no attempt to cover up how important he is. After the reward challenge, we cut back to camp with Boston Rob front and center and Cesternino literally in the background. While Boston Rob is saying how hard the challenge was, Cesternino is in the background parroting almost exactly what Boston Rob is saying.
That was probably the toughest challenge I've ever experienced in any survival.
But clearly, he's not important, which is why we hear that from Boston Rob. We then do hear from Cesternino, though, about how he is glad to have learned that Tina Wesson, who he believes acts fake, was voted out of Saboga, and he hopes that all the winners are voted out since he isn't a prior winner, at least not yet.
I saw Tina was voted out of the game. That made me very excited because I think that she's a big phony. Last time I checked, I didn't have $1 million yet.
Once again, in episode 2, Shapira wins immunity, so we move on to episode 3, where the next reward challenge is to make a shelter using supplies given to them by Survivor Production. An independent judge will decide which tribe shelter is best. Since Boston Rob's day job is construction, he takes the lead on the project, and he delegates Cesternino and Alicia to work on making a garden or something like that.
We gotta get a creative aspect to this. If you guys want to try to make a deck here or something, a flower garden.
Cesternino then says that he constantly feels left out by the big boys whenever he plays this game.
When I signed up to take part in the reward challenge, I thought that I'd be being a big help to Boston Rob and Big Tom. That's the story of my Survivor life, that the big boys don't let me play.
We then hear from Boston Rob, who paints us a picture about how Cesternino is useless and doesn't do much to help the tribe, which Alicia immediately parrots to us as well.
Cesternino, I think, is useless all around. Seems like he's on a never-ending coffee break.
It gets frustrating because Rob Cesternino does the minimal to get by.
The Shapira tribe does end up winning reward, which gets them some niceties, and at the immunity challenge, Jenna Maraska makes a shocking decision and decides to quit since she has a terrible feeling that she shouldn't be playing right now while her mom is going through cancer. This ends up being the right call for her, as we learn that not long after she leaves and sees her mom does tragically pass away.
Due to someone who's very ill at home right now, I need to pull myself out of the game and be there.
Now, before she leaves, she hugs everyone, and we do see her pretty much hug everyone. However, the show does its best to not show her hugging Cesternino, but it clearly happens if you pay attention. Despite them being the only two people who are returning from the Amazon, it's an interesting editing choice. A very interesting editing choice. It is now episode 4. Boston Rob and Amber's relationship has been heating up, so to speak. They aren't even attempting to hide what is going on, which has people noticing. We first hear about this from Big Tom before we hear from Cesternino, a very blunt interpretation of what we should expect from these two in the future.
So warm.
Boston Rob and Amber are gonna do it. I don't know when, but they're gonna do it. They've got the mat, the pillows, everything is in place.
Cesternino then collects tree mail, which to him is plainly obvious that this is a challenge he did on the Amazon. He decides to change what the mail says to make it sound like instead of what they will actually be doing, the tribe will instead be doing a gross food challenge.
We played this game with kisses and hugs. Now it's time to see if you can eat bugs. No, I'm just kidding.
Which he does a pretty good job of making up on the fly. However, he tells them he is kidding, they're not doing that challenge, but Sue doesn't hear him say, "I'm just kidding," and loudly yells about how they did this on Borneo, and she just keeps going on and on.
I could eat this whole pot, turn around, eat whatever they put in front of my face.
Sue, I was kidding about that.
It was a joke.
Let's relax. It's no sweat, this one.
At that reward challenge, everyone is tasked with basically trying to match items they have in their box with items that others have in their boxes. This brings out a lot of fun interactions between these iconic returnees, including a few for Cesternino, such as Kathy asking him for his shell and he says, "Hey, I'm a big fan of yours."
Hey, Cesternino.
Kathy, big fan.
I love you too, even though you're a snake. Give me your shell. I can just read your mind, buddy.
Can you read it now?
Richard Hatch then asks Cesternino for his sea sponge, and of course, he has to joke about this.
Rob, give me your sea sponge.
You will never get my sea sponge.
Lex then gets an item from someone else, and in an attempt to hide what he has in his box from the people next to him, he takes a few steps back, to which Rob says,
Easy, easy.
I already know what you have. I don't need it.
Oh, shut up.
You know nothing.
Shapira does win reward, and a twist to the season is that each tribe has gotten a box/treasure chest. It's similar to Pearl Islands, but in this case they already have the box, now they need to find the keys. And they need 3 keys exactly to open it. Winning this reward now nets Shapira the clue to the 3rd key, and while looking for that key, Boston Rob is struggling to find it. Cesternino tries to take a different approach to finding it, and when he does, the goofy music immediately begins, and we hear from Boston Rob about how dumb Cesternino looks.
I think you're going the wrong way. I think we're gonna take this way. I looked over. The kid's building a friggin' sandcastle on the beach. He looks like he's 12 years old. You know, he got his shovel there and he's just putting it together.
While this isn't a dumb strategic move, the entire moment is edited to make Cesternino look as dumb as possible. Boston Rob does end up finding the 3rd key, and they finally get the box full of things like rice and booze. At the immunity challenge, Shapira has to sit out 2 members. Cesternino volunteers to be one of them, and it is a blindfold challenge that results in a lot of people running into each other and accidentally hitting each other with massive puzzle pieces. And despite collecting all of their pieces first, Shapira loses immunity, and it isn't even close.
Mogo wins immunity.
Cesternino then tells us that he regrets not being a part of the challenge, as he thinks he could have been the difference maker on whether they won or lost.
I think that with the crew that we had in there, that was not our best puzzle building team. And I think if I was in there, maybe we could have won.
We then see Amber talking to Big Tom, where she proposes, let's vote out Cesternino since he is incredibly smart and Tom is on board with this plan.
So I'll vote out Cesternino.
Little Rob, as I call him, he's smart.
Alicia then tells us that she likes Cesternino, but since she isn't seeing him or anyone else scrambling, she thinks, I might be a goner.
You want a piece? It's not that great.
No, thank you, babe.
Oh, man.
I love Rob Cesternino. He's a great guy.
We then cut to a conversation between Boston Rob and Cesternino, where they agree to work with each other to vote out Alicia and then Sue.
I made an alliance with Boston Rob. I've got his back, and a deal's a deal.
While this conversation seems completely normal at first, it actually is not. Clearly the story is showing us this now to make it seem like Cesternino is making a deal right before Tribal to keep him safe. But if you look at both of their faces closely, you can see that all of a sudden their facial hair looks like this is probably day 5 or 6 and not day 12. It's pretty obvious when it's sandwiched between the Alicia scene and the scene that comes immediately after, which has Cesternino's facial hair magically get longer. This means that he made this deal much earlier than the show is wanting us to believe. At Tribal Council, Cesternino votes for Alicia and says he is feeling uneasy about this, but he hopes it all works out.
If everything goes through with this, I have a feeling the next time I see you, there's gonna be a big finger wagging in my face.
Alicia then votes for Cesternino and says there has been far too much silliness at camp and hopefully him going away will bring everything a bit down to be more serious.
You're a great guy and you're really funny, but I think what we need from here on out is a little more seriousness.
Cesternino is then voted out 5-1, and every single vote he receives really looks like he is getting stabbed over and over. This is clearly a blindside for him.
Rob, trap has spoken.
So let's break this down. How is Rob Cesternino as a character? It was pretty much more of the same as what we saw of him in the Amazon. Humorous, witty, and a general boost to the fun we see on screen whenever he's there. He has his occasional villainous moment, but other than that, he is an overall net positive to every episode he is in. And it is just a massive shame he is gone only a fourth of the way into All Stars. Out of 12 character moments shown on the show, 9 were heroic and 3 were villainous, making Rob Cesternino a hero on Survivor All Stars. Now, how is Rob Cesternino as a strategist? This is incredibly difficult to judge, and it's a great question. How was Rob Cesternino as a strategist? We saw him kick butt and take names in the Amazon, so here we are only 2 seasons later and we see almost nothing of him strategically, except an out-of-place deal he made with Boston Rob, being called a slacker, not doing the immunity challenge that resulted in Shapiro losing, and being called incredibly smart by others. It just like doesn't make any sense. Boston Rob constantly tries to paint him as an idiot, and Amber and Big Tom want him voted out for being super smart, which contradicts what Boston Rob says to us. For me personally, it's just an incredibly hard thing to judge. I actually think that Cesternino says it best in his exit confessional about what happened to him in this game.
I'm just very disappointed that I didn't really have a chance to get into the game. I feel like I was kind of targeted unfairly. It's gonna take a little while to swallow this one.
Out of 6 strategic moments shown on the show, 1 was smart and 5 were dumb, making Rob Cesternino a dumb strategist on Survivor All Stars. Thanks for watching. If you like the content you see here, then please support me and this channel on Patreon. Your financial support makes all of this possible, so thank you, and thank you for watching.